for All. It's the podcast with Comedian Nazareth.
Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of the Laughter for All podcast. I am Comedian Nazareth, and thank you for joining me on this Valentine Day. Yes, it's Valentine Day. Should I be out with my beloved wife of 26 and a half years and having dinner? No, I'm not crazy to go out on Valentine Day and go to a restaurant where you have to wait in line for half an hour. No, so what I'm gonna do, we did is we had lunch together. So we had a quiet lunch at a restaurant nearby. We had a great time, and she bought me flowers because I'm allergic to flowers. So she likes to see me cry and tear up when every Valentine. So that's what we did. Honestly, I- you know, I like to be more romantic than I can. Than I am, but it just it's difficult because my wife is so she knows everything. She knows everything. Like when I buy her something to surprise her from Costco, she calls me. She goes, "Did you get the blue one or the red one? I wanted the blue one." Like, how did you know? She goes, "We have the same credit card, don't you?" Oh, okay. One time I tried to do a surprise party for her. It just didn't work. It didn't work. She found out. She changed everything. She changed the balloon color. She uninvited some people. She changed the cake. When we got to the surprise party, I was the one surprised. So stuff like that. One time I bought her like uh, a romantic spa day. I thought me and her can go spend the day at the spa, maybe mud bath, and then just have lunch and all that. She took her sister. Okay. But she's gracious. You don't get me wrong. So now I just tell her, hey, listen, honey, why don't you go buy yourself all this Christmas, Valentine stuff and consider it from me. So last month when I looked at my American Express bill, man, I was so romantic. Anyway, so that's what happened. A happy Valentine to all of you, especially single people who you don't know yet. Next year you could be with someone you love. You're gonna love, not you love already. You're gonna love. So you don't know that. So that's why I want to encourage you because my story is very encouraging. I saw my wife the day I saw her. I asked her to marry me. So some of you think, oh, it's gonna be a year or two. No, it might not be a year or two. It might be tomorrow. You might be that person. You don't believe me? Get my book, Hope in 24 Hours. That will really encourage your socks off. But anyway, this is not about me. Next Tuesday, I will be in Vista, California at Calvary Chapel Vista doing a Valentine event on the 21st. And then on the 25th, I'm going to be in Tyler, Texas doing a cowboy um, concert in for Brand Cowboy Church in Tyler, Texas. So we'll see you there. And then in March, my tour starts, and I'll be all over California, Florida, Washington State, St. Peter's. What do you call it? Missouri, and then from there I'm gonna go to Portland, Oregon for the Fish Radio. Then 2 days later I'll be at the Rock Church in Monroe, Washington, of course. And then on the 30th I'm gonna do a concert for the Fish Radio in Sacramento. Very busy month, but hey, I need the work and I got the work and I'm thankful. Anyway, enough of me. My guest today is a friend of mine. I worked with him when we were in San Antonio, Texas, and he moved since to Colorado Springs. Good move. And nothing against San Antonio, Texas, but Texas is filling up with Californians now, so he moved to Colorado. But he's very funny man. He's a comedian, actor, speaker, and musician, and has been entertaining audiences all over the nation for over 20 years. Mike's life observation stand up style mixed with fun parodies is a double dose of fun for audiences of all walks of life and ages. Mike performs at churches, community and corporate events, student events, conferences, and fundraisers. He's a member of the Christian Comedy Association, the CCA, and an official artist spokesperson for Compassion International. Please welcome my good friend, Mike Hickman. Hey, Mike.
Hey, buddy, how you doing?
Good. How are you? Thank you so much for taking the time.
Oh, thank you for taking the time. It's great here in Colorado Springs. I thought Texas weather was the weirdest weather that you can get, and I was mistaken. It was about 60 degrees here today in Colorado Springs, and tonight it will get to be a nice balmy 4 or so.
Ah, four
We have
degrees.
a winter storm coming through here in just a little while, and so no one's going to be moving around tomorrow. That's when we all hibernate for the day, and so that's good.
S-
Yeah.
So why did you move? I mean, other than the weather. I mean,
A lot of people ask, what brought you to Colorado Springs, and I just say a U-Haul, pretty much. So, no, a few different reasons, really. I think one of the number one reasons was we were ready just for a change of scenery. I'd been in Texas my whole life, traveled a lot, retreated back to Texas. It was great, loved Texas, but I think we were ready to look at some different things. Also, our daughter is in college here, and
mm,
comedians, we're all rich. We make a lot of money, uh,
yes.
especially comics, that primarily are, well, I hate to say Christian comedians. We're comedians that are Christians. We make a lot of money. So, not really. But so we decided that we'd have one household instead of two, instead of just sending our daughter to college and having, paying for an apartment there. Then back there, we thought, yeah, let's continue to eat. And so we like food, and
Uh-huh.
we like things like what being able to wash dishes, and and buying
Y- y-
clothes. So
And
we all just moved up here and stayed together as a family. Yeah,
that's the beauty of being a comedian, Mike. Like we can live anywhere. I told my
sure.
wife, I said, if you ever want to move anywhere, which I don't want to leave California, the weather beautiful, the all that, but we can live next to an airport anywhere and
Sure.
still have a full, career. We
Absolutely.
can go anywhere. It's not like we're limited to anywhere. I mean, you can go any state, and within a year, you'll have so many local events to do. But also, you can just get to an airport and fly out, and that's the best. So to me,
Oh
I
yeah.
live to her. I have two airports within half an hour, and I have one airport LAX within an hour. So if
Hmm.
anything happens, and then San Diego's an hour and a half, Palm Springs in an hour and 15 minutes. So if there's any emergencies, I can always find a flight. So the
Right. When I lived outside of Austin, the closest airport in Austin from the point where we lived was about an hour and 15 minutes to an hour and a half. And we have Colorado Springs Airport is 16 minutes away. Then we have Denver, which is about an hour and 10 minutes away. So it's perfect. It works out great. Yeah.
Denver's amazing. That's an easy
Yeah.
airport because everybody comes.
It is.
So you're in the center of the country.
Yeah.
You know what I did today, and this is really funny. I mean, I've never done this before. I went to Chat GPT, which should call it Cheat GPT, and if people are not familiar with it, this is the future, where you can ask it. It's an AI, artificial intelligence. You can ask it questions, and you do essays. It will give you an essay. If you're a student, boom, you don't need to even do homework anymore. You can do it, and it won't be what do you call it? It will be original stuff. So I asked GPT today. I said, "What kind of questions can I ask a stand-up comedian for my podcast?" I normally don't have any questions, but I wrote. So I'm gonna start with that question. It's just this is the first time I'm trying it with her.
Okay.
And then,
Sure.
what inspired you to become a stand-up comedian?
Wow. So probably some embarrassing stories from when I was a kid. But I'll make that short though. So I was what people call a drama queen, I guess, when I was little. I was 5 years old, and all I wanted to do was make people smile, laugh, clap, whatever. And so I remember being 4 or 5 years old, and we had our two channels on TV. That's all. The
Uh-huh.
only thing we would sometimes get a third channel if you looked at it really, really hard.
If you
Uh,
move the hanger and the
Right. Oh,
clothes.
we moved the antenna outside the house. We would have to turn it by hand. One of us yelling from the front door, and my dad would be at the antenna trying to turn it just to get a little bit better reception. But when I was 5, I would some of the shows that we had was Hee Haw
Uh-huh.
and Dukes of Hazard and things like that. So I was immediately drawn to music and drawn to the arts. It's just been my whole life has been in the arts, and it's really starting in music. So I would listen to theme songs from those TV shows, and I would listen to the musical guests that they would have on Hee Haw of all things.
Uh,
And then I would have my little tape recorder and my cassette tape recorder, of course. And then I would take it to my room and I would memorize those songs. And within an hour, I'd come back and I would put on a show for my parents. And
wow.
yeah, and so and then we had a little thing. I'm going to fast forward a little bit, maybe a year or so, where underoos came out. You know, the underwear that's fun to wear. And I had Superman underoos, and I would put these things on, and I would put on some type of superhero show for my parents and my friends. And it was probably embarrassing to everyone else. I thought it was great. And so that sort of started, and people would laugh, and when they would just say, "Do it again, do it again, do it again." It was just encouraging, as I found out you were just like the Word of God says, "He who refreshes others will himself be refreshed." So in my little mind, I was making people laugh. That was making me laugh. I had a good time. They had a good time, and that sort of stuck with me up through getting in band and music and one-act play and musical theater in high school and in college. And when I was 16, 17 years old, I just felt God telling me, like, you're going to use these arts to serve me. And I thought,
Mm.
okay, how am I going to do that? And then I went and saw a guy who I really respect named Mark Lowry.
Oh yeah.
And
We've
Mark
had him on
Lowry,
the podcast.
oh, love Mark Lowry. And he was one of the main inspirations because he was doing the trifecta of things that I loved. I loved performing music. I loved comedy and jokes and watching comedians. And I loved speaking to people from the word. And I thought, wow, I'm watching him do all of these things. He would speak so eloquently and as God would give him word, but yet he was one of the funniest comics that I knew. And he was also a gifted singer and musician. So I said, wow, there is hope. I can use all these things. And I believe God just gave me a glimpse of, you're not going to be that, I'm going to use you how I want to use you in these things. And so I continued to study music. I started performing music in churches, church to church to church, and then adding little comedy moments in the beginning to sort of ice break and sort of I don't know, just bring everybody into a place of comfort before we got into. I did a lot of worship leading for youth camps and things like that too, and
But
children's camp.
let me stop you here. First of all, I wanted to ask you something about it. When you were younger, were you the only sibling, or you had older siblings or younger siblings?
I had a
Was that
sister. She was 5 years older than me. Yeah,
okay? So
yeah.
you were the you were the attention. You got the attention thing. Now you said you started at 16, 17, saying, "How can I honor God? How can I use my gifts to honor God?"
Yes.
Now this is not a normal thing a 16 or 17-year-old would say unless they're
Right.
solid in the faith. Now, were you in Texas at the time living?
I was in Texas, right outside of Tyler, Texas, which you just mentioned. I was in a
Oh, I'm gonna be there
little,
in
c-
next week.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was in a
So,
little city called Arp, Texas, ARP, right outside of Tyler. Yeah.
okay. Now, where did your faith come from? I mean, what made you that 16, 17-year-old wise person thinking that great question?
Okay. Well, this is I think this is interesting. So when I was little, I was adopted, and my parents, one of the first things they did, I was enrolled in the cradle department at church probably when I was 5 days old. And so through elementary school, I was going to church. If you had asked me through my middle school years, "Oh, are you a Christian?" I said, "Oh yeah, I believe in God. I'm a Christian," and all that. But when I was 13 years old, uh, I want to say it like this: God revealed himself to me. I'd been out of church for about a few years, really wasn't of an interest to me. I would have still said, "Oh, yeah, God's fine. That's no problem." But I had never surrendered. It wasn't really real. It was just more culture. And
Mm.
a girl invited me to church. And so I was like, "Sure, I'll go to church with you."
Oh, sure.
And started singing in the youth choir there, and still just kind of skimming along. To make a long story short, it was after
Mm,
church, and I was walking by myself through the church hall. And
mm.
here's where I really began to believe that God can reveal himself to anyone at any time in any way he chooses. Alone in a
Right.
hallway, I walked by and there was just a picture of Jesus, that, a rendering of Jesus. And I just kind of looked at it for a minute. I felt drawn to it to stop and just look. And honestly, I started weeping in the middle of a hallway at 13 years old and just felt overcome. My hand started shaking. I was just not fearful, but it was just like, I wasn't sure I understood, but something in me brought understanding, which of course the Holy Spirit brings understanding. And I stayed there for a few minutes just in that moment. And I thought, and I remember it to this day, oh my Lord, I've been just playing. I've just been playing a game. I said, this really is real. Jesus, you are real. You're not a storybook character that I learned about in Sunday school. You are absolutely real. And suddenly, sermons and truths and things just started flooding into my mind. And the very next Sunday, went home, I told my mom, and the very next Sunday I said, I've missed it. This is huge. And I want to surrender to Christ. And I did. And then it's like the Lord just started downloading all these things that were stories, and they just became real in that moment. Yeah. I am not getting your audio right now.
Okay, I was. Were you
Oh, there you
playing instruments at the time? Were you, at that
go.
age when you started doing worship and all that?
I was singing. So I loved to sing. When I was in about ninth or 10th grade, I began learning piano, learning keyboard.
Mm.
In college, started learning guitar. I was playing trumpet and, in band and things. And I still play to this day and perform a lot of jazz, blues, and
Wow.
gospel and things. So I still perform here and there, and used it in worship leading a lot. So it went from vocals to piano, guitar, and then I started leading worship myself instead of using, tapes and CDs as background tracks, and started adding comedy to the music set in the beginning until we got to more serious, reverent worship. And so comedy started just inserting itself there. I wasn't a comedian that I considered. I was this musician. Then I began to keynote speak and adding funny stories to that, and became a worship leader and a youth pastor in a few different churches. Then so many years ago, God said, you're going to lead out with comedy. You're still going to be involved with music. You're still going to do these things, but we're going to put comedy at the forefront of that. And now he's put back into acting. I was an acting coach and a drama director for many years. So all that to say, the arts is, since I was 5 years old till now, God has been molding acting and comedy and music just to use for his glory.
You are so gifted. So walk me through a show, because I know when you opened for me in San Antonio, you just did stand up. But what's
Mhm.
a typical show? Let's say
Okay.
you're gonna do an hour. What would you open with? What did you start with music? What is it? Take me through that 1 hour
Sure.
show.
Well, there was a time that I did open up with a song called "Comic Man." It was started with music, but then I learned, and getting some feedback from some others, they said no one knows your persona, who you are yet. They don't know. You're coming in with this music, and it's fine, it's working, but let them know you up front. So we start the show with just getting to know each other a little bit, instead of just coming out and bam, 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 bam. It's like, all right, we're here to enjoy ourselves tonight. Let's see where this goes. And so I will start with, about, 10 to 15 minutes of just straight stand up.
Mhm.
Then I'll introduce a parody song of sorts, another 10 minutes. And then I will include it within the hour, between 2 and 4 musical numbers, parody songs that may be performed on guitar, keyboard, or with
Mm.
tracks that I've made in the studio, things like that.
So you bring
And
you
then,
bring a keyboard with you and a guitar, or you just bring
yeah,
your
I
guitar?
bring it unless it's a fly date. Then I usually ask the church, "Hey, do you have a keyboard? Do you have a guitar?" And usually they have
Oh,
one or the other, and if they don't have one, I'll just do the whole thing with the other. So
oh, wow.
then I close the show. I always reserve some time at the end of the show, and unless it's a corporate event, which I still offer encouragement during corporate events. But if it's a church or a community event or a faith-based event, which is 90% of what I do, I will close with testimony, with encouragement. Then I like to close with a worship song or two, just to bring everyone together. And it's not about me. It's all about God. It points to Him. I want to make certain that everything that's happened that night points to God, who is the source of our joy and the
Amen.
source of our strength. And so I let the crowd, and usually the last part of it, I'll just shut up and stop singing. I'll let the crowd, if it's a familiar worship song, I'll just let them finish. And I might just go ahead and leave the stage or just stay there and pray afterwards. So,
That's
but
so humble
yeah.
of you. I love that. I saw one
Mm,
artist, she's a big name artist. She did the same thing. The last song, she just played the piano and then sang, and
mm,
people started worshiping, and then boom, she walked out. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. Because a lot of comedians, they want that last applause, that standing ovation.
mm,
That now for me, I end up with giving an invitation when it's a Christian event. So I
mhm.
don't, you know, it's the same like you, like you're ending it with glorifying God, not taking the credit, which is fine. I mean, if a plumber gets paid and then someone say, hey, you did great, my toilet is working, I mean, there's nothing wrong. God doesn't look at that and
Sure.
go, man, this
Right.
guy took the credit. No, you did a good job, you deserve it. But I mean, giving that up and to move it into the Lord, I think he gives us extra favor for that one. I think so. But
Sure.
anyway, so I'm still not asking you all the GPT, the Chat GPT. But I want to ask you my question, just from my. So you said I want to do the first 10 minutes, just let him to know who I am, which is, I mean, that's great. That's the best comedy, is to let people know right away who you are. But who are you? I mean, what would someone leaving the show go? Hey Naz, I saw this great comedian. I forgot his name, but he's finish the sentence. He's the what?
Well, I would hope it would be. He seems to be someone that really wants hurting people to enjoy themselves again, to be able to move forward from struggle and tragedy, to be able to laugh and learn how to pass that on, how to pay that forward, how he taught us as a crowd to leave here and go help someone else laugh, so it's perpetual. And so that's Michael Jr. said something at our CCA conference one year, and it stuck with me. And I say this all the time. If we as comedians are, he said it more eloquently, of course. If we as comedians are in this and standing on the stage to harvest applause for ourselves, we're going to be disappointed. And you know and have heard as well as anyone that comedians, that's the area we're attacked in, is our joy. And there, there's in, especially in secular, I think there's suicide, there's so much because we're attacked in the area of our strengths. But if we're there to harvest applause for ourselves and we don't get that sometimes, or it didn't go the way we wanted, then we're constantly um, I don't know, feeding insecurity in our lives. But he said,
Mm,
if you're there to give a gift, then you put together everything God has given you, the jokes, the presentation, the whatever you're doing on stage, your why, and you give
mm,
that to them as a gift. It's in their court. And so furthering that thought, if I am giving comedy and talking about worship and talking about what God can do in the middle of your struggle, and how God can restore you and refresh you and encourage you,
mhm.
um, I would be amiss to lead people to think it ends at the end of my comedy show. I want to give that to them so they're like, now we have tools to go and give that to someone else, whether it be a family member, or that person in our mind that is hurting next door, or someone at church, or in their family that's going through trials. So I truly want to give a gift and have them take the same Holy Spirit that's in them, that's in us, and just perpetuate that joy.
Okay, you talked about you love to take hurting people. What's your credibility in the hurting arena?
Oh yeah. Well, 8 years ago we lost our son, and this
Uh,
this was one of the big ones. So his name was Eli. He was 17 years old.
Oh
Had a
man.
um, we had his birthday party that night. We made made steaks, and then he wanted to go over to a friend's house to play music. He was a guitar player, and there was a drummer and another guitar player who he hung out with, and they played music a lot. Well, that night after he left, he was involved in a shooting and was killed. And
Oh.
we found out about that, of course, the next morning. And I had a comedy tour planned with some friend Kristen Weber and Scott Smyer and Peter Wolf. So we were going to do this comedy tour, and I was like, I don't even know how I can get up in the morning. How am I going to do any of this? And so canceled all of that. My wife and I, you can imagine, I'm trying to make a very long story shorter, but it was hard to get up in the morning. It was hard. We couldn't eat. We couldn't do anything, as you could imagine. And little by
Oh.
little, God, in his love and compassion, and through the Holy Spirit, and also through trusted friends and family, he began to restore us. And one way he did that, he knows that I see things in pictures. I have to,
Mm.
I don't know if it's the ADD or what. You can tell me things, but if you show me something, I understand it a little bit better.
I'm like you. Yes.
Right. And so if you have time, I'm going to give you a couple of examples of just how
Please
God
give me.
helped
Take
me
your
rediscover.
time. We don't have a limit.
Good, good, good. So it was the first Christmas after we knew you have the series of first after you lose someone. And so this was a few months after he had passed, and we're sitting in the living room, and I'm looking at the Christmas tree. And then I look under the tree, and I notice there's no gifts for my son under the tree because
Mm.
he's not here. And I thought, God, how sad. There's no gifts for my son under the tree. And
Mm.
God, in his wisdom and in his eloquence, spoke to my spirit, and he said, what could you possibly have bought him at Walmart that could compare to the joy that he's receiving right now?
Wow.
But then, and
Wow.
I meditated on that, and then it went further. There was more. God said, He said, you at Christmas are celebrating the birthday of my son Jesus on earth, but your son is at the party. I
Oh
was
my.
completely blown away. And so, what it says in Luke 6:21, where weeping is turned to laughter, that's what happened in that moment. I began to smile and laugh, and I shared with my wife, I said, God just downloaded this thing into my mind that I have to
Mm.
tell you right now. And I've shared that with so many people, even recently, and they said, I never thought of it that way, that he's at the party. And like, it would be cruel for me to say, hey, come back and be here now. That would
Right.
actually be
Right.
cruel.
That's the worst thing he can do.
Exactly.
Oh.
And in the months and the weeks to follow, I was like, I don't want to move. As we began to move forward a little, we started to feel guilty for laughing. We started to feel guilty for moving forward a little bit. And I said, God, why do I feel so guilty? Because I wanted to stay right where I last knew him. I'm moving away from that last moment that I saw him. That's getting further behind me. And I want to stay close to that last moment that I saw him. And again, God in his eloquence said, every step you take forward is one step closer to seeing him again. See,
Mm.
our son is not in our past except for memories. He is in our future. Why would I
Mm.
want to stay in the past when every day I live is a day that I get to live and get to the next day and live to get to see him again, and then, of course, forever with Jesus.
That is
And
gold, man. That is gold. That's gold to anyone who lost a
mm,
loved one. That's just powerful wisdom from God, man. That's so.
well,
How do you, as comedians, how do you, once you share that on stage, how do you transition back to laughter?
Well, when I get towards, let's just go to the end of a typical show. I don't talk a lot about what happened to our son. I just talk about what God has done. And when I say it's done me, I don't want the focus to land on me. I want people to understand that this is for you. That same compassion, that what in those struggles, in those deep tragedy moments, when you have to stand and believe what you say you have believed about God, is like, God, please let all that be true that I've read, that I've learned, that you've taught me. Please let that really be true and not just be something that's in my Christian bag that I carry around. Please
Mm.
be the compassion, the restorer, the lover of my soul, the lifter of my head, the lighter of my path. Please really be all those things. And he proves he really is. And I was like, everyone, this is for you. This is why in the middle of your tragedy, you can have joy, because God wants to restore you. By the way, this is not heaven we're in right now. And I'm glad it's not the other way around, where we have everything perfect now, everything is wonderful, and then at the end of our life, we have an eternity like now. No,
Right.
everything is pointing to our need for a savior now. Everything is making us hungry for heaven. And I'll tell you one other story that
Yes.
I feel like Tommy Moore right here, because he's always like, let me tell you a story. Let me tell you a story.
Tell me a story.
uh, I was having a particularly difficult day one time. It was several months after Eli had passed, and I was going for a jog. I go jogging a lot, but as I was about to jog, I said, God, I'm really missing in the day. I need something from you today. I need to hear from you. I need some comfort. Will you
Mm.
please give me some comfort right now? So I began my jog. Now I got maybe not even a quarter mile up the road, and having ADD, I look for shiny things. I notice shiny things. And as I'm jogging, I noticed something over on the left side of the road that was just shining. And I thought, what is that?
Shine.
I was drawn to it. So I jogged over, I stopped and I looked down, and it was a car side mirror that had been knocked off of a car, and it was facing up. And it was a sunny day, and the sunlight was just shining off of it very, very brightly. And I picked it up, and I felt in my spirit again, God, saying, "Look in the mirror." And I looked, and I was like, "Oh, that's great. This is reflecting heaven, where my son is, where Jesus is, where we'll be one day. That is comforting." And then I felt God say, "Look further." And I looked at the mirror further, and at the bottom of the mirror it said, "Objects in mirror are closer than they appear." I
Wow.
was I was I was gone at that moment. Again, the weeping that I'd had while I was jogging turned to laughter. And I grabbed the mirror, I still have it, went home, showed it to my wife, said, "Look what God just showed me. I really needed to see it this way." And he really did answer my prayer, that he, again, Luke 6:21, turned my weeping into laughter, because
Wow.
I realized as I contemplated even more, my son is alive just somewhere else right now. He's doing life as we're having this podcast right now. He is doing life right now also in heaven with our Heavenly
Mhm.
Father in the presence of Jesus. It's all happening parallel, just in two different places. And at one point, we're going to come together at the end, and we have a reason to celebrate. And then God starts flooding in purpose of, like, so many people came to know Jesus because of his testimony while he was alive. After he's gone, it took that to get some people whose hearts were hardened to soften, to be like, "Oh wow, we see what God's doing in your life. We remember things that he had said." And I think if our son had known that people were going to come to Jesus because in his death, I think he would have nodded and said, "Yeah, I'll die for that. Sure."
Mm.
And then,
Um,
after a really a short time, I was like, "God, what do you want me to do career-wise here? What are we doing here?" Because I don't wanna freeze up on stage. I don't wanna have a moment that I just break down in front of people on a platform.
right.
And I remember the next show, God said, "I want you to do that. Don't cancel it. That's gonna be your first one back." And this is why I'm in comedy. What I'm about to tell you is another reason I stayed in comedy, and why I'm more fervent with it now. I went to a church. It was a big church. I was like, okay, Lord, thank you for that. It's this church. I've been there before. They know my humor. They know me. They have a great audiovisual department. They have the best microphones. They have the best screens. They have the best lights. It's air conditioned. It's great. It's going to be wonderful. At least I'll be comfortable. So I went. What I did not know was that it was I knew it was an after church event. They were going to have church, and then we were going to have the comedy show. So everyone ate. He said, "Oh, by the way, we're not going to be in the auditorium. We have you on a flatbed trailer out here in front of the church." Now, this is Texas in the middle of summer.
Yeah.
And it was
I've
hot.
done that.
Yes. And there were no monitor speakers, and I was performing music also in there. I'm like, how am I going to hear the music? We're outside. And then I looked, I said, okay, are you going to have chairs out here in front of it? They're like, oh no, everyone's going to be under that tent. The tent was about 50 yards away from the stage. Now, you as a comedian know that comedy is an upfront thing. Things move from front to back. And if there's a space of think of half of a football field, almost, 40 or 50 yards. That's how far the crowd was under a shaded tent from where I'm performing. And so here's what happened. Every comfort that I had said, God, I'm going to take comfort in that. I'm going to take comfort in that. I'm going to take comfort. All the comforts were ripped away from me. No air conditioning. It was hot. Music's not going to be comfortable. The microphones were not good. And I was like, okay, Lord, this is going to have to be all you, because I have nothing to hold on to except my bits and you. And so I got up to the side of the trailer. They were about to announce me. The youth pastor there was standing beside me. He did not know our story. It was still new. And he said, "Oh, last time you were here, you were telling me you have a son and a daughter, and your son's like in band, right?" And I'm like, this is literally under a minute before I go on stage. And I said, I said, he was. I said, he recently passed away. And his face just, and I said, it's okay. I said, God's going to do something really special today. I know he is. They announced my name. I walked up the 3 or 4 steps, got up on the flatbed trailer, and God started downloading wisdom. It was like he put a robe of mercy on me.
Oh my God.
Whew. To resolve the music, I immediately went over, turned one of the speakers around towards me. All the students in this huge student department came down, sat right in front of the stage, filled in that area in front of the stage. Naz, I'm here to tell you, I didn't feel hot. I felt comfortable. It was one of the best shows I had ever done up to that point. The pastor comes over later, goes, "We got to have you back again. We got to have you back again." I left off of that stage with a tear in my eye going, I now see that it's not about me. And I think doing comedy up to that point, there was still part of me that thought it was about me. My gifts, my talents, what I could do, what I can bring. I can make people laugh, God said, "See, I ripped away everything that you took comfort in. I took over everything, including your presentation." And I said, "God, really, it was you speaking through me, because to not even feel hot." And I went over to the merch table, talked to my wife, and I looked down at my T-shirts that had Luke 6:21, which I had these shirts well before our son had passed, which blessed are they that weep now, for they shall laugh. I said, this is new meaning. And on the ride home, we started taking apart, what is God saying? There's got to be more. There's got to be more. And he said, "You know how much you've been hurting?" I'm like, "Yes, hurting." He goes, "Everyone else is too. Everyone is hurting on some level, whether it be light, medium, or catastrophic. Everyone is hurting. Now you know how the person that's hurting the most in the crowd, you know how that person feels, and you can speak to that now with comedy, with music, with later on with getting back into acting and things like that. It's like everything, the desires that I put in your heart, you need to understand are from me and about me and points to me. I'm going to use those through you, but make no mistake, It is about me. And so from that point on, I was more fervent about comedy. And when people say, how can you do comedy? Your son died. I'm like, how can I not do that? How can I not sing and praise his name? How can I not encourage people and show them the light of what God has done since then from
Mm.
real life experience, not just from what I read or from what someone told me one time? He
Have
really
you,
is who he says he is.
amen. Have you ever had someone walk up to you after the show and say, "I lost my son too"?
Many, many times.
Wow.
Uh, I remember one in particular, they said, this is the 2-year anniversary of our daughter who died in a car accident. And we didn't even want to come tonight, but we felt like we were supposed to be here. And I shared a little in short about things I just told you. And they said, we're so glad now we can move forward more. We have some joy now. I feel like we healed a little bit tonight. Another guy came up. He didn't lose his son, but he said at the end of the show, he goes, me and my son, he's a teenager. We don't get along. We don't like each other. And I was prepared to go home tonight and say, I'm done with you. Get out. You're not my son anymore.
Wow.
And he said, whew, I still have my son. He said, I'm going home right now and we're going to reconcile and we're going to be a family. I was like, that's what it's about. All the comedy, all the jokes is just breaking the ice. Yes, it's refreshment. Yes, it's laughter, which is strength from the Lord. But when you, as a comedian, people are glued to what you're saying. What's he going to say next? Oh, that's funny. What's he going to say next? Then you bring those truths because now they're open to receive it and they trust you to bring truth. They trust what you're going to say. And then when it comes down to the ministry that happens at the merch table or in the parking lot or over tacos or wherever you're at afterwards, I'm like, that's the best part of the whole thing right there.
I think God gives us the comedy part to be able to break the wall. That's it. And then if you don't have any, that's why what, when I do a corporate event or someone, I ask for a lot of money because I'm gonna break the wall and I have nothing else to give them other than them liking me, or that's like, or maybe encouragement a little
Yeah.
bit. But when you get to share what God is doing in your life and give them an opportunity to respond to that hope, that's what you're doing. You break the wall with comedy, and then your story. That's amazing. I mean, I wanna take you somewhere else just to change
Sure.
the tone a little bit, and just.
Yeah.
So, what's the worst show you've ever done? What's funny? The funniest, embarrassing moment you had?
Let's see. I don't know. Maybe there's been so many that I'm going to just choose one. No, I know exactly which one it was.
Okay.
The worst show that I've ever had was my first DVD filming. It was
Oh, oh, that's
it
bad.
was it was a nightmare, and
No.
and I should not have done it. I wasn't ready.
Oh,
All my material was new to pretty new.
mm.
I knew I was going to edit it down, so I did. This was a mistake. I did an hour and 40-minute show.
Ah,
I
our
probably
40
had at that time. I probably had 20 good a joke minutes. You
material.
know,
Okay. And
uh,
you did hour 40.
I did an hour, wore everyone out. Now, when I say everyone, I it was in a place where
Everyone.
nobody knew me at all. I
Oh
did this
man.
at a place in Dallas. It was a great place. It was a great theater. It was a theater that they have church on Sunday there, and I was going to stay the next day and lead worship. But I didn't know how to do any promotion or anything. So 16 people showed up to my DVD
Ah,
taping, spread out in this theater. Um, a camera fell over during one of my bits. I had been very sick for 2 or 3 days. I had 103 temperature or
oh my.
102, 100. It was well over 100 temperature, but I'm like, I'd already paid everybody. Uh, this has to happen. And so my voice it was okay. I think God gave me some voice during that, but it was raspy. Uh, the bits were new. They weren't ready. It was too verbose, way too much setup for way little payoff. And I printed 1,000 of those things and threw
Ah,
away. I threw
ow,
away about 700 of them. I was like,
ow,
nope. So this
ow.
is not. I was not ready for that table. I gotta have a DVD. But with
Mm.
16 people that giggled here and there, being sick, it was a disaster that night.
Oh
And so
man,
I
that
hope those things are not in circulation. I have one left in a drawer somewhere just to have it. But I hope those things aren't in circulation anymore.
I would. This is a story you should share at the Christian Comedy Association for Newer Comics. I think that is
Absolutely.
amazing.
Well, that's true
Wow.
because I used to teach a comedy class here in the Springs when we first moved here. It was
Mhm.
at a comedy club over here, and one of the biggest questions people have is they got to get content to their YouTube, got to get content, you got to get content. I said no, you need cleverness, you need artistry, you need mileage, and you need time because Naz, you know as well as any seasoned comedian, if you put out things that aren't ready, that stuff seems to spread faster than the best stuff you've got. And
Exactly.
so if you've got to wait 10 years to put out a special or a DVD or even just a few YouTube clips, filmed with an iPhone, you know, make sure it's good content when you put it on there. But some people rush into the media end of it and they forsake, working on the craft in the beginning. And we're always working on the craft, of course.
That's. What do you see yourself in 5 years? I mean, these are my questions. I'm not. I'm
Mhm.
going. Not going. I only asked you one question, and look where we. You
Right,
answered
right.
so many of my own questions with just this 45
Well,
minutes.
Well, 5 years from now, I hope to be more mature and more seasoned, and both in all the trifecta. I keep bringing up the trifecta of the arts: comedy, acting, and music. I want to develop the craft and not think I've arrived because I know I haven't, and because we're always students, and I just want to be a better student for the next 5 years and beyond. My hopes is that God will expand the territory in all of those areas. If I'm doing a commercial or on an acting set, I found that whether it be a faith-based film or a secular film, we're God's ambassadors everywhere we are. If we're on a live stage telling jokes, or if I'm at a coffee shop just playing music for the afternoon, I want to be faithful. I want to be more faithful than I am now, and I want to be able to bring truth and keep it about God and encourage people and point people to Jesus. So I just want to do that better every year.
That's a great goal. Now tell
Yeah.
me, what is what do you call it? How did this whole pandemic thing not just impact you? How, well, better than the pandemic, there's a worse thing than the pandemic was the woke culture. How is that affecting your material? The people who are really like you can't talk about this and you can't talk about that, and this is how do you deal with that?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it is it. I'm not going to say I've had a lot of difficulty with can't talk about this, can't talk about that. I pray that God gives me wisdom per audience to know the audience that I'm about to speak to, and I don't dramatically change um, my set. I mean, if it's a student set, I have a template of my show, and if it's for this crowd or this crowd, I may take out these sections and insert these sections, and
Mm.
this for maybe a student conference or this for if it's an older crowd or so. But I really just pray, Lord, help me not to offend anyone, and if they do it, if they are offended by something I've said, Lord, I just pray you'll cover over that by your Spirit and help everybody to move on. And I probably have. I've gotten a couple of notes before afterwards, and from I think someone may have misunderstood a joke or a bit, and they said that wasn't funny. Don't do that joke anymore. And I'm not a bully type comic or an offense type comic. I want to be complimentary. I talk a lot about life, relationships. Of course, I talk about the church and things like that, and maybe some of the not making fun of the church, but bringing out things that are humorous sometimes in church culture and in Christian culture. And every now and then something like that may not sit well with someone, and I'm saying, well, I'm sorry you didn't enjoy that, but thank you for your input. God bless you. And you move on to the next thing. And now me, I on the way home, if I've learned over the years that if I begin to dwell on some of those things, it just etches further and further and further, and I can't sleep that night. That's the way it used to be. And now I have to believe that when I stepped on the stage to the time I stepped off the stage, and even when I talked to people until I left the parking lot, I trust that I did God's will to the best of my ability. And I want to go home feeling good that that's what that night was. Lord, cover anything that I messed up in my humanness, but Lord, please take over and let people remember something good.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Mm.
Oh, so what is the? I mean, how do you? When do you? When you write a comedy bit, I mean, when you write a bit or something, do you write it completely before you even go on stage, or do you just like write on stage, like you come up with an idea and you go up and start sharing it?
A little both. Mostly, I have things already written. Sometimes you don't know they're funny until you're on stage. I think our friend John Branyan had said that one time. He goes, I don't even know if it's really truly funny until I'm on stage. I understand what he meant by that now. That I'm like, this is hilarious. This one's gonna kill. It's gonna be the best one ever. Crickets.
Yeah,
I'm like, all right, let's try it at the next two gigs. Yeah, let's give it the old try. Then you go home and you rewrite. Um, I don't really throw anything away. I might put something on a back burner. It's like, well, it wasn't for this, or until I can learn to rewrite that joke more eloquently or funny or more clever, we're
mm,
going to leave that one out, or we'll change it. But generally, the bits I speak a lot from experiences that have happened. So it comes from a point of realness in the first place, where probably a third to a half of my show will be real life experiences just presented in a funny way. And so it's genuine. When I talk about my college roommate, or when I talk about things that happen at home, like, those things really happen. I'm like, it absolutely happened. I just may tell it in a more comical way. Then there's those improv moments that happen on stage. You're like, all right, I'm going to keep that. I didn't even think about that. Things that I believe God just gives you, or something that happens, or things that will just pop into your mind when you're
mhm.
in the middle of everything that's happening. You're like, oh, please write that down after and keep that. But I would say 90% of everything is already written, and then with room to revamp, to
Right.
renew, and to just make better.
What's your favorite audience?
Mm.
Maybe
I
age.
love an audience where there's a diversity. I like to have something for everyone. So I wouldn't say it's a lot of children in the audience, but a general I'll say it like the general church crowd, or just a crowd that has preteens to elderly in it, where everyone is together and we're all laughing together, all these generations, and that it feels a little different and hits a little different, unless it's just an all elderly crowd, or an all youth crowd, or an
Yeah,
all 30 to 40 crowd. And those are great crowds. But when it's a diversity, I love that. I think that's
that's
wonderful.
yeah. What are you working on, Mike?
Uh, a few things right now. Right now, I'm planning to be I'm going to be on the Mike Huckabee show
Oh yeah,
March 17th. So getting ready for that and praying for what God would have me
first
uh,
time.
do there. First time,
Oh,
yes.
you're gonna love it. You're
Oh,
gonna get
you've
work
been on
out of
there.
it.
How many times have you been on there? You've
Couple times.
couple of times. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, you love it. You'll love it. You're gonna get some work. You're gonna get some attention from that. Yes.
Oh, I can't wait. I'm also writing I my first short film, a faith-based screenplay right now. I just finished the script to it and doing revisions, so it'll probably be 2024 before we film that. But that will be my first, other than a music video. One time, that'll be my first uh, acting as a writer and director for that. So I'm
How
excited to.
many minutes is it? How many
Uh, it'll
minutes?
it'll be about a half an hour.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. So
Wonderful.
which
Is
is
it
kind of a
about your
long
life?
short film. I'm sorry.
Is it about your life or what is it about?
No, my wife and I have thought about writing that at some point, because we've been through a lot. But this one is, without giving too much away, a synopsis
No.
is going to be, it's a story between a mom and a daughter, a mom that has a certain disability that I won't give away, but a daughter that she's a climber. We're going to film it here in the Rockies. She's a climber, but gets in a little bit trouble when she's hiking in the mountains, and her mom with a disability basically has to find a way to get her daughter back. And
Oh,
so the title of the screenplay is called Pray, and it's going to be. I hope people understand when I say this, a non-churchy, if you know what I mean.
yeah, I know
I
exactly what you're saying.
reverent, of course, but a non-churchy, but a real life um, short film about prayer and about God hearing us. And so that's about as much as I can give away at this point right there. But look for
Nice.
that in 2024. So I'll be
Yeah.
working on that. There's another film called Serona that's about to release that I was in, and so
You think being
just
in Colorado Springs would that improve your your acting career or worsen it?
it's helped a lot. When we were moving from Texas, I was doing some acting in the Austin area and around, and flying up to Atlanta to do something. There's a lot going on in Atlanta, Georgia,
Right.
and for acting. Had a little part, a little extra. I did a lot of background work in Austin on The Chosen and Fear the Walking Dead, and some little iconic things. I did a lot of background, and then a few features and things. When we moved up here, I was like, is there an acting scene here? Because we moved here in COVID, near the beginning of COVID. Comedy
Mm.
was gone for a little while, pretty much. Although I filmed my Dry Bar special in 2020, right in the middle of
Um,
COVID. Like, you want me to do a comedy special in the middle of COVID? Okay. And I said, yes, I will. Absolutely. But comedy shows were few and far between, but acting started rising up because you could do COVID test on set. You didn't have a live audience gathering. And so it was a
right.
limited cast and crew on sets. And so God said, we're gonna hone this now for a little bit. Comedy is still going to be there, but we're going to do this because this is what's available right now. And let's see where I was going with that. I don't
Yeah.
remember where I was going with that, other
Yeah.
than
No, no, no problem. You answered my question. Now,
yeah.
how can people get a hold of you, Mike, to book you, to talk to you, to
The website's probably the best place, mykickmancomedy.com. You can go there, and then from there, message me. Facebook, Mike Hickman Comedy. Um, Instagram is Mike Hickman Official, and then also TikTok is Mike Hickman Official. But if you don't know where to go to the website for booking and information and bios and all that at MikeHickmanComedy.com.
MikeHickmanComedy.com. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much, Mike. I always ask people to encourage people at the end, but you did already with the story of your son. I mean, we can't top something like that. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll be praying for you. I can't wait to work with you again, and
Oh yeah,
hopefully we'll connect. I love you, man. Thank you
love
so
you too.
much for taking the time to be with us. All
Thanks again.
righty. Well, thank you so much, and hang on in there. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for watching. I mean, this is moving. This is, this is not laughter, but it does more than laughter to you. It really touches your heart. And I pray that if you know someone who lost a loved one, I mean, you have to have them watch this episode or listen to it. It will be on audio by next week, so on iTunes and all that. But you can watch it on YouTube or under Comedian Nazareth on Facebook here or on LinkedIn, and you can watch it you know, whenever you can. So thank you guys so much. Again, next Tuesday, I'll be at Calvary Chapel Vesta doing a Valentine event, a couples event. And then on Saturday, the 25th, I'll be in Tyler, Texas, doing a cowboy festival concert. So go to my website, nazarethusa.com, and check that. We've been doing this show for 160 weeks, so it's just been over 3 years, and I never asked anything. But I'll tell you what, I found out that there's a button, a QR code that says donate. So if you want to donate to this, to Laughter for All, you can. You don't have to. It's not we're gonna close the show if you don't. But what I'm saying, hey, it will help if you feel like this is helping you. This is really impacting your life. You can go to laughterforall.org and donate, or you can donate here, and that will also help us doing our big free concerts for the communities. Anyway, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Next week, we won't have a show because I will be doing an event in Vesta. But the week after, we're gonna have Kenny Locke, who is just amazing. Actually, not Kenny Locke. We're gonna have on the 28th. I'll tell you who's we're gonna have. We're gonna have Greg Stoop. He's a Green Beret, you know, in the army, and he has a story where he stepped on a bomb and just all his body was out of his body, and they fixed him back, and he has a great story. So it's a great encouragement for men and for others. So join us on that day, and we'll see you then. Thank you guys so much for watching. God bless you, and have a great night.